Hello, and welcome to my Fire Emblem 15 ETC playthrough. I'm USS Gordon Captain. Today, we get to learn about the negative effects of Lucas dying. That is nothing. So, on to the 4-3 map, Marlowe's map of Fear Mountain. So, Fear Mountain is one of the last two maps of what I would describe as the first part of Alms Route. It is one of the harder maps in Alms Route, although it's not actually very hard. And it is one of the last hurrahs of Clive. Clive has been with us for the whole game, and it's been pretty good, but after this map, Clive is not going to be all that amazing. And this map is one of the first examples we get to see of the Rapier one-rounding Barons, which is something that's going to be really exciting and going to happen a lot in future maps. Barons are surprisingly bulky enemies with at least 40 HP. Many of them have 44 HP. They also have 20 defense. So in order to one-round them, you need to have a very powerful weapon. Rapier can't actually kill them on its own, but what we're going to be able to do is rely on crits to kill them. Here I actually put a very specific setup in the south, with Clive and Python being adjacent to each other. We're able to kill the paladins and not be attacked by enemy paladins. If Clive can kill the paladins while Python fights the archers, enemies will prefer to target Python over targeting Clive if able. But if they're not able, they'll target Clive. And since the enemies Clive wants to attack are 1-range enemies, and the enemies you want Python to fight are 5-range enemies, this works out quite well. So the other major impact we're going to have is the rest of the south side. You may notice that we have Matilda here, sort of coming from the south side to attack enemy paladins, and our north side army is just cliff for now. Used to that, Matilda is going to be able to snipe one enemy paladin, but otherwise won't be able to do much combat at all. And Python will be able to snipe some enemy snipers, but it's a really good idea to have Python stay out of the range of enemy knights. Knights here are very similar to the knights you fought in Alm 4-1, as to say that most player units cannot kill them. However, the exception is Clive with a critical hit can one-round them. And now we get the first use of the rescue spell. So rescue is the reason why I've been trying to get Fe to level 10. She just barely made it in time. And rescue is going to be really important on the next map, although it kind of helped here. Rescue allows a unit to go in within one tile of the cleric. So you would think that would not be much better than, would be worse than warp, which it is. However, you can do rescue into warp, which is something you can't realistically do. Which is something you can't do if you don't have rescue in warp. And while it's worse than warp, anything is better than nothing. So it's nice. So on this enemy phase, the main objective is going to be getting Clive some critical hits. Each critical hit Clive gets reduces the number of crits he needs on other turns by a decent margin. So Clive getting 2 crits here means that he won't need to get critical hits later, which is nice. And now it's cleanup time. So one thing I've been able to avoid doing is fighting any enemy witches. That was just pure luck. Normally you would have to fight some witches. And another thing that I have mostly been avoiding is having Tobin kill anything. Tobin, as you can tell, has mostly fallen off. But here he's going to be able to get 1 kill on the sort of the last knight. Normally you'd feed this kill to Luthier, but since Tobin actually has hit the 13 strength benchmark, it doesn't matter anymore. Tobin's going to become my main mage for late game instead of Luthier. That was like really lucky. Tobin's only about 13% to hit that benchmark. If Tobin didn't get the critical there, Clive would have gotten the kill, and then This is the least reliable part of the map, killing Marla with Alm's killer bow. However, Alm got it on the first try, so no complaints there. And this is Fear Mountain, cleared in 3 turns. I'll see you guys in a bit for Nuibaba's Abode. Nuibaba's Abode time. So, Nuibaba's Abode, we're going to have the worst enemy player phase in the history of this game. Could not find a reliable way to beat Nuibaba's Abode in any reasonable time frames. And the real reason why is because Nuibaba herself uses the Medusa spell, which reduces a unit's HP to 1. Normally, that's a very bad thing, and you can typically defeat Medusa users by just poking them with a critical hit killer bow. Since there's only one player phase action that is legal on Nuibaba's turn, you have to get the crit on the first try. If you don't get the crit on the first try, it's just an instant reset. However, on this enemy phase, which is also very precarious, and Python is literally 1 HP away from dying, literally will die with Xaxes, we have some minor solution to that, which is turn wheeling, and we can turn wheel twice, and if Python dies and either of those fails either of those 2 turn wheels, it's over for him, and you have to reset again. So that turn 1 death rate is really high. It's above 40%. There wasn't really much I could do about that. The rest of this map is a lot easier once Python gets through his major death-defying defensive traits. And now we just need to do the standard thing, which is hit plus critical hit enemy Dreadfighters. You may remember that Dean in Celica's route has been killing a lot of enemy Dreadfighters with hit plus crits with the Greysword. Rapier only has 15 critical hit, was much worse at getting crits than the Greysword, which had 40 crit. Still, similar principle applies. Another significant disadvantage of Cliff is that Nuibaba's Abode is a Celica's route map in Alm's route, as far as enemy composition is concerned. It has 1 Bow Knight, that's just Celica's route Archer. It has Dreadfighters, it has Arcanist, and it has Nuibaba and a Canor. So, since the enemy composition is really a Celica's route map, and Alm's route typically isn't really built. Your Alm's route army isn't really built to handle a Celica's route enemy composition. However, there are solutions to it, and you can use the few Alm's route units that are capable of handling Celica's route, like Python, who is sort of like Leon, and we have Cliff, who's a lot like Dean. Now, we don't have Pegasus Knights, but we do have Warp, so it's not nearly as necessary. And we don't necessarily have a guy like Bowie, but we don't necessarily need Bowie because this is late Celica's route we're looking at and not early Celica's route. And so instead, we are going to be relying on sort of Dreadfighter combat from a player unit that has good combat, Cliff. Now, unfortunately, Cliff needs to get some decent lucky dodges because enemy Dreadfighters just are absolute assholes. But we do have a large number of turn wheels, so even though Cliff is just going to have to dodge over and over again, at this point in the run, there's enough ways and permutations of changing the combat order that Cliff will be able to do his duties. You just have to keep revising the turn wheel order over and over again until you get the setup you need. One thing to note is I turn wheel back after the Dread Fighter on the supply tile hit. The reason you want to do that is because the supply tiles would be occupied by other Dread Fighters, and so you don't really want Cliff to be there when the enemy Dread Fighters attack. Well, on turn 3, it's just a cleanup phase, but like so many cleanup phases, you have to rely on iffy player units. In this case, there are ways of beating this map more reliably in a 4-turn setup from this position. I really wanted to go for the 3-turn because I don't know. I thought 4-turning this map would be kind of dull. The best way to do that is to get a nice Python dodge. Is to get some nice dodges. So the best way to get dodges is just pray for luck. And the most important thing is I will need to get Alm to kill this Arcanist here, this Myarch. And as you can tell, Alm actually dies in 2 hits. So, the solution for that, though, is that if you look at Python's positioning, the Arcanist is going to go after Python instead of going after Cliff, instead of going after Alm. And that matters because Python is not a game over when he dies, whereas Alm is. So you can just hope for a Python dodge until you get lucky. Now, other solution is you can just hope for an Alm dodge, and Alm does have better odds of dodging enemy Arcanists. The solution to needing the Alm dodge, though, is that if you want to get an Alm dodge, you need to have Alm dodge like a 67, which if he doesn't get the dodge, you just fail the map, and that's really bad. Now I go for it here because I'm on my last turn wheel, and I don't want to reset this whole map, and I really don't want to go for a 4-turn. But in hindsight, or like if I was actually trying seriously, you would not go for this. So another important thing to note about Python dodging is what happens if Python dies. So with Lucas, it was if he dies, he dies. With Python, it's that we have Dragon Balls, also known as Revival Shrines, which will be available later. Those Dragon Balls will, in fact, allow me to survive. However, Alm got the dodge, so I didn't need to do that. See you guys next time. Bye.